I was about to make a series of photographs of young girls of that age for a French magazine called Vogue Homme. And I found it quite an interesting enterprise because I like the girls of this age and because the girls of that age for some reason like me.
Welcome back to the Polanski Retrospective, where we delve into the life, films, and many crimes of the world's most controversial director. Last part we covered From Knife in the Water to What, and saw the rise of Polanski from absolutely nothing to a bigger-than-life Hollywood director thanks to the success of Rosemary's Baby. We saw some very dark points in the life of Polanski. The very last thing we covered was the transition from his role as a victim to now, well, a perpetrator. But trust me, things get downright hopeless in this part. Speaking of which, in 1970s, LA screenwriter Robert Towne came to a realization. The city of Los Angeles he once knew was now gone. The people, the culture, even the smell was different. He came upon a book detailing the fuckery that had gone on with the water, its private ownership, and how much that had affected and built the current city. With a sense of pain and indignation towards what he was reading, he decided to bring back to life the 1930s LA and the story of the water control and corruption. But where to begin? Coincidentally, at this time, he met with a retired police officer who he was buying his dog from. Sharing stories, the officer told him about his time working at the force in Chinatown, telling Towne he did his best to do absolutely nothing at all, claiming Chinatown at that time was like a jungle, where everyone spoke a different dialect, everything seemed muddy, and you couldn't tell if you were helping a victim or assisting in a crime. So the best thing to do most of the time was not to intervene. This stuck with Towne, not the place, but the idea. The best thing to do is to sometimes not do nothing at all. Chinatown, 1974. A story of how the water was used by the elites to shape the future of LA, told from the perspective of a private investigator with a backstory of policing in Chinatown. The easiest part was the personality of the detective, based entirely on Towne's old roommate. Your roommate may not take out the trash and may also puke in the sink, but Towne's old roommate was actually Jack Nicholson.
If you can't eat the Venetian blinds, I just had them installed on Wednesday.
Towne would go on to talk about the project with the one and only Robert Evans, who was mystified by the script. Towne was hoping to be the one in the director's chair, but like we already saw in Rosemary's Baby, Robert Evans was not gonna allow this. Evans loved the script, but he already knew someone who was perfect for the job, someone who would bring in some finesse, and strangely enough, a European vision to this American tale. The one and only Roman from Poland. Towne and Polanski got to working on the script together. Things weren't exactly smooth between the two, but for the most part they managed to compromise, except for one thing. One small little detail. The ending. They couldn't really agree on an ending. On the fall of 1973, production would start without them having an ending on site yet. It was to star Jack Nicholson as J.J. Gittes, the PI hired to investigate a murder, Faye Dunaway as Evelyn Mulray, the femme fatale figure, and with support of John Huston, director of many noirs, most importantly, The Maltese Falcon. Polanski was very against working in LA after the whole Manson incident, but somehow Evans managed to convince him. Since Evans was producing, he allowed Polanski to work as he wanted, no useless meetings with producers, and full creative control, for the most part. Production would run smoothly, apart from a few fights between director and stars. Jack Nicholson and Polanski getting into a fight over an NBA game, and Faye Dunaway throwing her piss at Polanski's face. Evans would also make Polanski replace his cinematographer, as he took too much time setting up lighting, and all for a look that Evans thought was more outdated and old Hollywood. During shooting, Polanski would come up with a very different ending for the film, something which was bold and would change the tone of the film drastically. But Evans backed him up.
You're in charge, make a decision.
Weeks before its release, the film was screened privately, and it was good, but something was off. What I didn't mention in part 1 was that the music for most of Polanski's films had been made by Polish composer Krzysztof Komeda. His most famous work, The Haunting Lullaby from Rosemary's Baby. Unfortunately, Komeda passed away just months after the release of Rosemary's Baby. Polanski didn't know who else could compose for him, and the selected composer didn't work out. They had to change the music, so Evans himself got new music for the film last minute. For this, he reached out to the best movie composer. Not John Williams. Not Hans Zimmer either. I'm talking of course about Jerry Goldsmith. With the legendary soundtrack in place, Chinatown was now ready to hit theaters. Evans and Paramount waiting for the awards to rain in. In June 1974, Chinatown hit the theaters. When the film released, it did decently. It made around $29 million on a budget of $6. So, for its delicate subject matter, it actually did pretty well. But in terms of the awards, it got 11 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Director, Actor, Actress, Cinematography, Music, etc. Had it released any other year, it would have cleared the Oscars. Unfortunately, it released the same year as The Godfather Part 2. The Godfather Part 2 was an unstoppable force, taking most of the prizes, and from 11 nominations, Chinatown won 1 award, Robert Town, for Best Screenplay.
Reiterate my gratitude toward everybody who worked on the film, toward Faye and Roman, and especially to Robert Evans, who put us all together, and to Jack, who's really magic.
It was such a masterpiece, it was deemed an essential part of American film history. 17 years after it was released, in 1991, Chinatown was entered into the National Film Registry. If you're a fan of noirs, you have to look no further. This is the best noir. It breaks and plays towards all the aspects and tropes of the genre, using them all to tell this very disturbing dark tale. You're like Jake in this movie. You think you know how noirs work, you think you've spotted the evil. No, you're just getting beat up trying to decipher this conspiracy. Their performances are so good and iconic. Faye Dunaway plays the femme fatale as perfectly as she throws piss at Polanski's face. But John Huston though, this man steals the show.
Politicians, ugly buildings, and whores all get respectable if they last long enough.
Forget about gore slop. This ending is the embodiment of corruption and hopelessness. It's one of the most disturbing scenes of all time. It's the antithesis of a motivational movie. Go watch this fucking movie. After the success of Chinatown, it seemed that Polanski was free to do whatever project he wanted, except for pirate movies, because Jack Nicholson wanted an insane amount of money and pirate movies are lame and stupid. But more on that later. He decided to instead go for a more personal project rather than a big Hollywood production like Chinatown. Polanski would go back to France to make The Tenant, based on the novel Le Locataire Chimérique by Roland Topor, who he got to help in the screenplay alongside with Brack. Paramount would continue to give their golden goose full creative control and a modest $3 million for his budget. The Tenant, 1976. The story of Tarkovsky, a Polish immigrant living in Paris who just moved to his new apartment, where the previous tenant just threw herself out the window and is now in critical condition. Tarkovsky starts to notice strange connections between himself and the previous tenant, and believes that his cold-shouldered neighbors may be conspiring against him. It's a surreal psychological thriller complete with paranoia, social alienation, and the Parisian hate of everything non-French, a conclusion of the Apartment trilogy. Polanski playing Tarkovsky serves to show how personal this movie was. And the prepossession rising French star Isabella Adjani is here playing Stella, the mysterious love interest to Tarkovsky. The rest of the cast is made up of mostly relatively niche actors, mixing in French with American talent, creating an offset in which Tarkovsky doesn't really belong in any group, heightening the alienation. Well, it made about $2 million on a budget of $3. Reception was mixed. It might have been too dark, and people would call the film incoherent and self-indulgent. It was particularly seen very poorly in France, the press never giving it a chance, as there was some drama of Polanski allowing a particular critic to watch it before the rest did. Also, the French did not exactly enjoy their portrayal on the film. It entered Cannes and left, with seemingly no one noticing. Brat! But nowadays it is actually viewed more fondly, and it is a worthy ending to the Apartment trilogy. Not as good as Rosemary's Baby, but it's better than Repulsion. It's a conflicting movie. It is a very personal and niche film, but that doesn't stop Polanski from trying out so many new tricks. From using Luma cranes, something innovative at the time, to playing with proportions and depth to enter Tarkovsky's mind, and we can't forget about the beautifully horrific standing ovation. This is a great fucking scene. With Polanski, even the movies which seem mid all of a sudden pull a fucking beautiful scene. It's so elegantly crafted and it works. Yes, it is definitely self-flattering, but amazing. I mean, you can definitely see it's the public, the media, the critics clapping on at his descent. Maybe a bit of foreshadowing for his personal life. A year after the Tenant released, on March 10, 1977, Hollywood would erupt. Polanski would be arrested and charged for 6 offenses against 13-year-old Samantha Gailey. Polanski would plead not guilty to all charges, but later, due to a plea bargain, would plead guilty to unlawful sex with a minor. Although it seemed like Polanski would get away with it at first, there seemed to be a grudge between the judge and Polanski, who was not taking the case seriously, seen in photos partying with minors. This didn't help. Expecting the judge to throw his ass on jail, Polanski fled the US. Till this day, he has never gone back to the US and is practically exiled of Hollywood. And yeah, he did that shit and shows little to no resentment. For such a disgusting incident, he would never be allowed to make movies again. Okay, at least big Hollywood studios wouldn't work with him. Okay, at least big Hollywood stars wouldn't work with him.
I like young women.
Hey!
I think most of men do, actually.
Fucking dog.
Not long after turning his back on Hollywood, Polanski was now looking to make a project that wouldn't require him to attend the US. And it so happened that before her death, Sharon Tate had given Polanski a copy of the novel Tess of the D'Urbervilles, wishing for Polanski to maybe adapt it one day. Tess, 1979. Tess is the story of a young, naive, but strong-willed girl who tries to make her way through the Victorian era and its morals. Cursed and gifted by her beauty, she tries to balance what is best for her family with what's best for her. Although a memoir, the film went through its share of rightly deserved controversy. No American studios or talent would be involved. It was still too early. Claude Berry, a powerful French producer, would step in to help to finance the approximately $12 million movie. Originally supposed to be shot in England, but due to the very likely possibility of extradition, it was instead shot in France. Polanski and Braque would co-write with a new key figure in the Polanski saga, John Brown. John, a British author and translator, who would go on to co-write and work with Polanski on many of his future films. Cinematographer Jeffrey Unsworth, who did 2001 and Superman, unfortunately suffered a heart attack and died 3 months into filming. Ghislaine Cloquet would come in and take over for the remaining 7 months of production. As the leading Tess, Polanski would turn to a 17-year-old Natasha Kinski, who already had her acting experience, including the Hammer movie To the Devil, a Daughter, with Christopher Lee. It was definitely strange to have an underage girl as the lead, straight after the whole incident. There was even talks of Kinski and Polanski being in a romantic relationship, but Kinski would kinda deny this. One says yes, the other says no, and surprisingly it's not Kinski the one who says yes. Very strange situation. Anyway, Tess premiered December 1980 and made a modest $20 million, but was critically praised. It got 6 Oscar nominations, winning 3: Best Art/Set Decoration, Best Costume Design, and you may have thought that the cinematographer dying mid-shoot may have impacted the film terribly, but the film managed to look incredible. It really does look great and won Best Cinematography. It's one of Polanski's most unique films, very different from the rest of his works, perhaps due to the situation he was in, or because, you know, it was a eulogy for Sharon Tate.
Nobody could have loved you more than Tess. She'd have given her life for you.
It is more reserved, subtle, a straight story, and lacking the typical dark humor. That being said, it is like 3 hours long and slow as fuck. Remember I told you that pirate movies were lame and stupid? Well, trust me, before Johnny Depp ever wore black eyeliner, they were fucking lame. Pirates, 1986. Pirates is a project Polanski had been working on since the 70s. By 1974, he and Braque had the script ready. A comedy adventure following Captain Red and his loyal cabin boy Frog as they go in their treasure hunting adventure. Originally, the film was to be led by Jack Nicholson as Captain Red and Polanski as the Frog. But the film called for a $15 million budget, and pirate movies weren't exactly hot at the box office. So Paramount put the brakes on the project, and Polanski moved on with the Tenant for the time being. Pirates was supposed to be an easy follow-up to the multiple award-winning Tess, but at the time, it was still too soon for Hollywood to work with him. Something which I am sure, would continue to be the same for the rest of his career. Paramount had pulled out completely, and there was talks with Universal of picking it up, but they too dropped it. It was actually Tunisian producer Tarak Ammar who took care of somehow getting $40 million for the production. In 1984, 10 years and a confessed raping of a minor later, Pirates finally began filming. Now with an astonishing $40-ish million budget, close to $100 million nowadays, over a quarter of which went towards the massive fully functioning ship which we follow for most of the movie. Money for big stars was simply missing. Jack Nicholson was completely out. For a while, Polanski wanted Michael Caine, but he too was out. Instead, he got Walter Matthau, who may not be a big name now, but he previously won an Oscar for Best Actor in 1976 for The Sunshine Boys. And Frog would now be played by the Irish Chris Campion. Not exactly an Oscar winner actor like Walter Matthau. In fact, he had never even been in a feature film, but his innocence and naivety caught the eye of Polanski. Maria Dolores, Frog's love interest, would be played by 17-year-old British model Charlotte Lewis. Now, you may be thinking, putting an underage actress directly under the control of Roman Polanski might not be a good idea. More on that later. Could the $40 million pirate adventure, lacking any American ties, box office draws, and with a very controversial director, manage to overcome the curse of the pirate blobs? No! It made around $1.5 million on the US and $5 million internationally. The critics, as well as the general audiences, as well as me, all were confused. It didn't really fit the shape of a funny pirate adventure. Consensus being it was too bleak for kids and too goofy at the same time, and just dull for adults. It really feels like Polanski forcing himself to make this ride for kids, but then won't stop throwing dark humor and aspects that would work in other stories, but not in the tone that is established with this film. The ending in particular is not bad, it's just so out of place and pretty fucking gloomy. It is bizarre. This came out a couple of years after Raiders. People were expecting a fun, charming characters, fast-paced, action at the sea pirate movie. It's not that. It does have some fans. Old people who watched this when they were kids, and well, yeah. Pirates of the Caribbean wasn't really a thing back then, so it was nominated for Best Production Design at the Oscars. I feel bad for Walter Matthau because he has said that he didn't enjoy his time during this movie, but he's easily the best part of the film. He really does do a good Captain Red. But a fucking disaster. Somehow not the biggest pirate movie flop. The pirate curse is real. Unless you're a small evil mouse. So if you're tired of rewatching Pirates of the Caribbean, I recommend the much more action-packed and thought-provoking Pirates, 2005. Pirates may not have been the return Polanski expected, but he was still plotting his comeback to cinema, with many ideas on how to make his triumphant return, but it seems studios weren't looking to take the risk. What happened with Charlotte Lewis? Well, in 2010, Charlotte Lewis would come out saying Polanski had sexually abused her before casting her for Pirates when she was 16. But at least Hollywood was done with him. After this huge financial and critical disappointment, Polanski and Brach would write the script of Frantic, a man who loses his wife while traveling in a foreign country. Warner Brothers showed some interest on the project, but Polanski's crimes were too horrible, and the American studios would stick by their virtues until Harrison Ford signed on to the film. Frantic, 1988. Dr. Richard Walker and his wife traveled to Paris for a doctor convention, but upon getting to their hotel room, they discovered they picked up the wrong suitcase, and moments later his wife vanishes, seemingly without leaving a trace. Getting no help from the local authorities or the embassy, Dr. Walker must enlist the aid of Michelle, the drug mule, played by Emmanuel Signer, to delve deeper and deeper into the Parisian underground and get his wife back. The White Lady. It's Taken mixed with Home Alone 3. the streets will never forget Home Alone 3. Ford was intrigued by the script, particularly the vulnerability of his character. It would be a new challenge compared to his typical roles of the time. Sigourney was yet to have a big breakout role, but her small role in Detective 1985 by Jean-Luc Godard made her stand out to Polanski. They had started dating before the film was in production, her being around 20 and Polanski around 50. It's a typical Hollywood production, but shot in Paris, with a huge star, a big-name director, and a safe yet solid premise for a genre which typically gets its money back. Like it or not, this would definitely be the Polanski comeback. Well, it underperformed, making around 17 million while having a budget of 20. It did, however, prove that he could make English language films in Europe and could work with big Hollywood stars. It's a solid thriller, and Paris is used pretty well to add to the cold alienation of the Doctor. But played safe and lacking the complex world Polanski tends to build around his characters. Ford gives a great performance as always, and it's a very different character from his usual at the time. He's not a space smuggler or a detective, he's just a doctor way over his head, and his performance reflects it.
I am an American and I am crazy.
Sigourney is also solid and seems to have good chemistry with Ford. It's entertaining, although lacking in substance and shock. Recommended if you want to see Taken starring Harrison Ford, or if you think Home Alone 3 is the best one. Oh yeah, and just like in The Fearless Vampire Killers, you already know, Polanski gets the girl. Polanski would marry Sigourney a year later in 1989. For me, this might be Polanski's most underrated film. Bitter Moon, 1992. Polanski, Brach, and John Brown John got to work on adapting the 1981 novel Lunes de Fiel by Pascal Bruckner. The novel dealt with dark and bitter views of obsessive relationships and power struggles, something right up Polanski's alley. Hugh Grant and Kristen Scott Thomas play a married couple, Nigel and Fiona, spending New Year's at a cruise ship where they meet the eccentric, wheelchair-bound Oscar, played by Peter Coyote, and his sexually charged wife Mimi, played by Emmanuel Signer. Could this be the same Mimi from Rosemary's Baby? I don't think so. Fiona and Nigel seem to be the perfect fairy tale British marriage, back when the world thought British people were polite royal wankers, instead of what we all see British people as now. But there's some trouble in that marriage. Almost immediately, the happily married and civilized Nigel falls for Mimi's charms. But before he can have her, he must endure Oscar's stories, from their overly sexual highs to their crippling present. It was shot mostly in location in Paris, as most of the film is flashbacks of Mimi and Oscar's relationship. The cruise ship portion was shot using a combination of an actual cruise ship out at sea for the outside shots, and the insides being shot on a special rig built on a set to simulate the movement of the waves. The film was highly shocking, bold, and erratic. It had to traverse that thin line between seductive and corny. And I don't mean corny, otherwise it would flop. The film would release to a mixed reception, as again, the European critics would praise it and the Americans would find the film distasteful, calling it excessive.
It's just downright obscene.
Obscene? Have you ever felt real, overpowering passion?
It made about $2 million on a budget of $5. Its contents never gave it a chance. It even had trouble on its American release, Miramax releasing it later and very limited. I think this might be Polanski's most underrated and bold film. It pushes the boundaries of compulsion, obsession, and relationship power all the way to the limit, and provides some great performances, particularly from Coyote and Signer. Coyote has a great range as he goes from this down-on-his-luck lover boy to a selfish monster playboy capable of doing seemingly anything to get out of this relationship. And then this cock of a paralyzed man. I thought Signer was okay in Frantic, but she's certainly more memorable in this one. Again, a character with this sad and pervasive progression, going from this cute pick-me girl, but weak lost puppy dependable on Coyote, to this full 180-degree turn. It has a lot to say about compulsion and relationship toxicity, but also about change. You see the love ship of two people who seemingly can't fulfill their desires anymore, going to the strongest and most dangerous territory, where it will sink unless they find a change to their predicament. And after this movie, Polanski's films would take a tonal shift. This would be the last time Polanski and Brach collaborated, and the typical dark humor so integral to Repulsion, The Fearless Vampire Killers, Cul-de-sac, What, The Tenant, Tess, Pirates, Frantic, Bitter Moon is certainly more downplayed from the rest of his work. Would this hurt Polanski's stories? Let's find out. Death in the Maiden, 1994. An adaptation of the stage play of the same name by Ariel Dorfman. In a post-dictatorship country in South America, unspecified but post-dictatorship, probably Chile, married couple Paulina, played by Sigourney Weaver, and Gerardo Escobar, played by Stuart Wilson, stand upon a new democratic era they had been fighting for their whole lives. During a powerful storm, a well-mannered stranger, Dr. Miranda, played by Ben Kingsley, helps Gerardo back to his house. But after hearing the doctor speak, Paulina is convinced he's the same doctor who aided the dictatorship in her torture and raped her multiple times.
I'm a fan of yours. I was so stunned.
Her husband, not convinced by her, they hold a makeshift court to try him and see whether he's guilty or not. It's back to classic Polanski roots. 3 characters in an isolated location with limited time for the story to develop. It's all a pressure cooker.
I'm telling you, it's him.
His voice. A memory of a voice doesn't prove anything.
His voice. His laugh.
But such a dialogue-driven movie required an excellent cast for it to have any chance at being remotely entertaining. Enter Sigourney Weaver as Paulina Escobar, already famed for Aliens, Ben Kingsley as Dr. Miranda, straight out of Schindler's List, and Stuart Wilson as Gerardo Escobar. Not a big name, but Polanski liked his stage acting.
I don't know what the fuck that means.
So how did it do? Well, commercially, with a budget of around $10 million, the film made around 3. It was expected to be big with the critics and the Academy, but there were no Academy nominations, or Golden Globes, or BAFTAs. It seemed the film went by pretty unnoticed. It had a limited theatrical release too, and its heavy stage play-like nature turned a lot of people off. But if you can get past the play structure, I think that this movie is pretty underrated. It is pure performances. Sigourney is great. And again, she plays a badass just like in Aliens, but a very vulnerable one, who suffered a great deal, and you're wondering throughout the film whether she is broken beyond repair. Stuart Wilson is alright, I like him, but Ben Kingsley, this is his movie. You can't tell if he is guilty or not, but he keeps this intense performance throughout the film of a man who, guilty or not, at any point knows if he says the wrong thing, he's practically gone. The ending monologue is amazing and truly overshadows the whole movie. 2 things you can be sure with Polanski. You shouldn't let him near kids, and he saves the best for last. The man knows how to do an ending. It's just a shame no one told Sigourney how to say Gerardo.
Do you love me, Gerardo?
Now this next movie. This one is special. Just as I think the previous 2 movies might be some of Polanski's most underrated, I don't know why you people like this one so much. The Ninth Gate, 1999. Based on the Arturo Pérez Reverte's The Club Damas, Polanski and Brown John wrote the adaptations, stripping out some boring elements and delving deeper into the occult and the satanic. Book collector Corso, played by Johnny Depp, who at this point was yet to be a household name, is tasked with collecting the other 2 existing copies of the book The Ninth Gate to find a gate to open a portal to talk with the devil. Or something, it's not very clear. His search leading him around the world, while people all around him suffer gruesome fates, and he himself is constantly being followed by evil and helpful forces. All of this sounds great. It's something the director of Rosemary's Baby should be able to elevate to the next level. Yeah, this is kind of the opposite of Rosemary's Baby. This is far from the typical Polanski flick.
Wait!
Polanski himself said that this time he wanted to do a movie that he would like to watch as a teenager.
The Ninth Gate.
Let's find out if Polanski managed to touch the hearts of these teenagers. On a budget of around $38 million, the movie made about 58, and it was critically panned. People were expecting another Rosemary's Baby, but well, Polanski wanted to do something different. He wanted a fun, moody thriller rather than delving into themes and messages. It is a strange movie. Johnny Depp's performance is okay, a bit uninspired.
You're a vulture, Corso. A vulture.
Wasn't an
our business.
Unscrupulous! Thoroughly unscrupulous!
Happy hunting.
Sigourney, I understand her character is different, to say the least, but it is the same fucking face expression the whole entire movie, and I don't know why, it just makes me so fucking mad. The cinematographer is Darius Kunji. The dude shot 7. This film looks uninspired. The movie really does look terrible at times. I had to really check if my screen was doing something weird with it. I'm still not sure. The film is goofy, has a messy plot, a pretentious ending, bad acting, bad action, bad directing, looks uninspired. Even the opening credits look bad. And yet, I did find it entertaining. Like the last third of this movie, it reaches so bad that it's good.
Let it be.
It sort of achieves what it wants. It's entertainment with seemingly not much under it. You could pay me to rewatch this movie. What and Pirates? I don't think so. What a fun, stupid adventure movie. I wonder what's next. That's it for today. If you're liking this adventure so far and want to keep on learning about the most despicable director, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next and final part, where we will be covering from the pianist to the palace, with all that drama in between.
He had sex with a minor, all right? That's not rape. He was guilty of having sex with a minor. Throwing the word rape around is like throwing the word racist around. Look. She was down with it. And she's talked about it. She's talked about it.
Oh,
now she's an adult.
So crazy.
Let me know what's your favorite movie we've covered so far, and why The Ninth Gate is secretly a masterpiece. Anyways, see you soon. I hope.